Hello folks, it is time for some more 40k rantage, and today we are talking about what I can only describe as a reply to a hobby nightmare. I've said it many times on this channel, okay? Do not write into hobby nightmares if something you are saying is untrue. You will always be caught. It always happens. You may see those subscriber count numbers and think, this is a small channel, this is where I can vent and do my little fan fiction where no one can hear me scream, or no one can hear you scream, sort of a thing, because it's a void. I can shout into this void and everything's going to be fine. No. It may say 20-odd thousand subscribers, but each and every single one of our videos gets 5 to 6 to 7, even 10,000 views sometimes. Now, that is more than most radio stations get in an hour or so, do you know what I mean? And also, those 5 to 10,000 people will be showing this video to people that they know and beyond, because they may recognise somebody. So if you write into Hobby Nightmares, make sure you're telling the truth as best as you remember it. The minute you start embellishing, normally I can smell a rat, and if I can't, the Northern Exile community definitely can, and they will catch you out, alright? Okay, I will say no more on that. But there is a reply that we've had to one Hobby Nightmare, I think it was yesterday's Hobby Nightmare actually, about a young man playing a young lady at Warhammer 40,000, and I wanted to get into a wider 40k rant about this. It is what happens when normal people with normal jobs, quote unquote, meet those guys in 40k. Now, before you jump down my throat, I think you all know what I mean when I say this, right? The guys in 40k, the guys who are, shall we say, it's really difficult to say this whilst being constructive, okay? Because before I go anywhere, please know, if you like 40k, it doesn't matter whether you're on the spectrum or not, it doesn't matter whether you're, awkward or lonely or whatever. Dude, I think you're amazing because you're in 40k and you're having a good time and you like Space Marines or you like Tyranids or whatever it is that you're doing. That's awesome, right? And you deserve to be here, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're all right, in my opinion. Okay, we're all brothers here, right? That being said, when I say a normal 40k person, you know what I mean, right? Very awkward around women, very awkward around people in general, right? Not the greatest social skills, can be extremely off-putting to certain people. Most of these people, if they end up working the Games Workshop, need the cringy training because they don't know how to talk to normal people. You know what I mean. You know who I'm talking about when I say this, okay? Another thing I'd like to say is I have a lot of autistic friends. I have a lot of friends on the spectrum. I have a lot of friends who've had maybe they're neurodivergent. I hate that word, but there we are. They're all that way. And none of them are nasty people, okay? I know some seriously autistic people, and they're not nasty. They're nice people, right? They don't lie, they don't cheat, they don't scam, they don't shout at people. They're just absolute diamonds of the earth, and they will do anything for you, okay? I do not believe that having a mental issue is an excuse for being a bit of a dick. I just don't, and I never will, okay? I will always cut you a bit of slack. Absolutely. A little bit of slack, no problem. But it's not an excuse, dude. I just don't look at it that way, okay? It just isn't something that I'm gonna get on board with. So, moving on to our subject of the day, alright? So our young man yesterday on Hobby Nightmares was playing a young lady at a game of Warhammer 40,000, and he told me how, hey, she was making out with her boyfriend, all of the people around her were giving her unfair tips and advice. They were basically telling me that all of my stuff was wrong and that every single ruling was coming down on her side against me, and I felt genuinely very sorry for him. I did smell a bit of a rat, and I did say, hey, maybe the girl in this situation is just as frustrated as you, because all the girls I know in the hobby would hate stuff like this, preferential treatment, do you know what I mean? Anyway, lo and behold, I put that Hobby Nightmare down and I get along with my day, only to find later on that the boyfriend and girlfriend of said Hobby Nightmare, the subject of the Hobby Nightmare, came on and said, yeah, that's not how it happened at all. And I'm going to read their statements given to me verbatim, because I believe everybody who is a subject of a hobby nightmare has a right of reply, especially if you think that somebody got something wrong. And that's what we're going to do today. But it will always also lead us in to a wider point. We had a really salient comment on the channel earlier this week about when normies get involved with the 40k people and the frictions that can happen therein. Let's jump into these things, shall we? Because first, I want to talk to... I'm going to call you... do you know what? I'll just call you Nora, because you told me to call you by your real name, so I will. So this is the lady who was involved in yesterday's hobby nightmare. And she said, hello. As I mentioned in my comment, I am the woman that your subject talks to in his video on hobby nightmares. Here is what actually happened. We matched through the club's group chat, and I told him I was fairly new to the game, which is true. I've only been playing for about 2 months, but I've studied a lot, learned the rules properly, and carefully chose my army. Fair enough. I don't want to be unkind, because he did seem a bit slow, and I genuinely felt bad when he left after I almost tabled him in 2 rounds. For context, he went first and left the store before I even played my second turn. Again, I think we're getting to the point here in this Hobby Nightmare where most of you have listened to the Hobby Nightmare yesterday, and even if you didn't, you can get the context of what's going on through Nora's reply here. But I actually feel for this guy here. I really do. Like, getting tabled this quickly isn't fun, right? Especially if it's to somebody who you thought at the start was not very good at the game. But also, I think there is a lot of elitism here. This is a 40k guy who obviously puts a lot of stock in being good at the game. He puts a lot of stock in being able to play the game, and especially play the game better than those who perhaps have looked down on him his entire life, right? This is the kind of thing we're looking at here. I want to take this away from this Hobby Nightmare and cast it out in general, because I've seen this kind of thing happen time and time and time again, where a guy will look at normal people entering into his hobby and go, do you know what? Screw those people, because they never had to fight and claw like I did. I'm a nerd, and maybe I've got autism, or maybe there's something else going on with me, and I've always had to struggle. They picked on me in school. I was always the butt of every single joke, and Warhammer 40,000 or whatever it is that I'm into was my safe space. It was my reclusiary. It was where I could go to sit down and just be myself. And now my hobby's being invaded by these normal people, and not only that, she's just tabled me in 2 turns. I'm going to be honest, that's where I think this has come from. Anyway, let's carry on, shall we? As we were starting, a very friendly guy, also a Sisters of Battle player who doesn't yet have a full army, came by to have a quick look at mine. He didn't compliment me or my models, which would have made no sense anyway, since I haven't really painted them yet. He was just curious, as it was the first time he'd seen a full 2,000 point Sisters of Battle army in person. We used the new mission cards and drew a twist card. Roll 3d6 for charge distance. This massively favoured him. He plays Black Templars, while I was playing Sisters, obviously. In the first round, our subject, I won't name him, right? I made the mistake of saying his name yesterday in Hobby Nightmares, and I apologise for that, my friend. I do. That was my mistake. But on the flip side, you did put in... I asked one of the figures in this, like, last night, whether they would have recognised it even without your name, and they would have. So like, you, it didn't matter that you were anonymous, dude. They knew exactly who you were, even by your descriptions. So, in the first round, our subject went first. He advanced all of his tanks, so he couldn't shoot with them, but they ended up in range of my multi-melters, and he charged one of the Sacrosanct Celestian units, which was led by a Hospitaller and positioned next to Morven Val and Paragons, one of the most powerful units in the entire game. Using 2 of his jump pack assault intercessor units, I heroically intervened with Morven. The result? He lost both units. I only lost 5 Celestins and took 3 wounds on a Paragon. On my turn, I destroyed 2 of his tanks and reduced his Black Templar Repulsor Executioner to 3 wounds. On his next turn, he tried to move it again, and I overwatched with my paragons and destroyed it. I won't go into the full battle report, but by the end, that's kind of over, isn't it? But by the end of his second turn, he had no tanks left and had lost 4 more units, while my army was almost completely intact. He packed up and left without letting me start my second turn, which would almost certainly have wiped the rest of his force. And yes, my boyfriend was playing at the table next to us, but I'm very competitive, and I win against him all the time. I would never ask for help or expect any kind of special treatment just because I'm a woman. In fact, it was our subject who constantly asked questions, not me, and he often ignored my answers, turning to my boyfriend or the shop manager instead, as if I couldn't possibly know the rules. To be clear, he didn't even know some very basic things. Okay, well, I'll skip these things that he doesn't know because we're getting into territory where we're going to be punching down, and I don't want to do that. Hopefully, Nora, you get what I'm saying. And the comment about me making out with my boyfriend, completely inappropriate. I'm a 35-year-old nanny. My boyfriend is a 47-year-old lawyer. This isn't our first relationship, we're not teenagers. No one was humping anyone's leg, we don't even kiss at the club. That kind of accusation is just bizarre. Frankly, if anybody acted weird around women, it was him. He avoided eye contact with me, and instead of speaking to me directly, would always address a man, even when I was the one he was playing against. Okay, and then she graciously said, I don't need to take the video down, she's happy with it as it is. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much, Nora. There's one bit of context from yesterday, alright? Now we're getting on to the second bit of context, which is Dawn of War. And I have to make sure I get this right, because Dawn of War is not Dawn, as in D-A-W-N, it's D-O-R-N of War, alright? Rogel Dawn of War, alright. And he says, I'm actually the boyfriend in the second story, and I must say, I listened to it in a state of disbelief. Now, I can't imagine how frustrating it must be to be a fan of the channel, be the subject of a hobby nightmare, and then that hobby nightmare not actually be true. It's gotta be really annoying. Not a single word of the tale told is true. I could only recognise it due to what was going on and the identity of the author. Sorry, that is my Discord going off. We're setting up a cyberpunk game at the moment, so if my Discord goes off, any Discord noises, that's me, alright? The armies that were played and the fact the guy left after his second turn. So as I said, if you're watching this, guy who sent in the original Hobby Nightmare, I'm sorry, but you left enough. I'm really sorry that I mentioned your name, but you left in way too much detail for a lie, right? And they knew who you were from what you said, essentially. Anyway. Yeah, so not a single word of the tale is true. I could only recognise it due to the identity of the author, yes, but also the armies that were played, and the fact that the guy left after his second turn. For some context, I'm not actually an incel showing off my girlfriend. Now, listen, Dawn, right? I know you're not saying it in a snippy way, right? But you have to level with me here, dude, right? From what I was reading, it did sound that way. I know it's all lies, right? But it did sound that way, alright? By the way, okay, I was talking to Steady about this earlier when we were playing video games, and he said, hey, be very careful, because, you know, it's one word against another, really. Do you know what I'm saying? And that is true. It is one word against another. But I think with reading out so many Hobby Nightmares, I've got a really good sense for bullshit. And it was going off when I was reading that Hobby Nightmare, right? I give everybody the benefit of the doubt all the time. You know, I will always read your Hobby Nightmare, but if you lie to me and you lie to the audience, it will come back to bite you on the arse. And that is why we're here today, right? This is why we're not redoing it, we're adding context to it and using it as a 40k rant going onwards. But anyway, moving on. For some context, I'm not actually an incel showing off my girlfriend. I'm a 47-year-old commercial lawyer who enjoys a bit of Warhammer now and then, and I've even started my own little Warhammer YouTube channel. Plug. Dude, send it to me. I'll ask you on Discord, and I'll try and put it in the comment description if you get it back to me in time. I love the universes of Warhammer, but I actually only play the game itself because my girlfriend does. She's really into it and better at it than I am. She certainly doesn't need anybody coaching her or from me. I wouldn't accept it from me, even if I did try. I barely spoke to my other half during her game featured in the Hobby Nightmare. I think I touched her head once and said, have fun. at the start, but after that I was too engaged with my own game to know what was going on with hers. In fact, I didn't even look at her game at all while it was going on. The only time I started a conversation with her table was to ask the author of the Hobby Nightmare if he'd like a pint when I got a round of drinks. You can drink at your store? Where is this? Alright, OP never mentioned this. You can drink at your store? I'm ready to throw out the rest of this video. Where is this? I'm so jealous. However, during their match, they had a few disputes over basic rules. Contrary to me coaching my girlfriend, it was her opponent who asked myself and others nearby, maybe 5 or 6 times, for clarifications on the rules. Each time we simply answered honestly, and it just so happened that he was wrong each time. We're talking about basic rules here. Units can be shot if any part of them is visible. For a second rank to fight in combat, they must be touching base with another unit that is in base contact with the enemy, etc. I didn't think much of this, but then the guy left quite early. According to my girlfriend, what happened was that he advanced all of his tanks into the middle of the battlefield on turn 1. She shot them all off in her first turn, and then he took his second turn and suddenly left, saying something about a washing machine breaking at home or something. He had lost most of his army. She hadn't lost a unit. When he left, which was a very poor thing to do when your opponent has only had a single turn of play, no one celebrated or gloated about my girlfriend's win or anything like that. I simply wished him a safe journey home, as I could see he'd come by a motorbike, and that was that. That evening, my girlfriend and I were talking about our games, and she said she felt bad about hers because her opponent seemed proud of his army but didn't know the rules, and it ended up being a bit of a thrashing. I said that I'd offer to play him soon and give him a more fun narrative-style game. Well, I won't be doing that now, that's for sure. I genuinely have no idea what compelled that dude to make up such a fairy tale about us and send it into a YouTube channel. I can only assume that losing to a girl really had a bad effect on his ego. Either way, it is a real shame. Everybody at the store we play at seems very cool, and we've both had nothing but great games over the past few months. Imagine being a female in this hobby and wondering whether your opponent will post a YouTube video about you if you win. Well, he didn't. He sent it in to me. And that's, and I wasn't there. Honestly, this hobby never fails to throw up surprises. Cheers. Alright. So, there we have added context to yesterday's hobby nightmare, and that should close that section of the video. Alright? We've had both sides. I know which one I'm leaning towards believing. In fact, I honestly do believe these two quite a lot, considering the conversations that I've had with them. So, we'll leave it there. And I'm sure they'll be happy that we leave it there. The wrong has been righted. Everybody has the information now, and we can move on. The thing that I'd like to speak about is we're normal folks. We have 2 normal people here. One is a nurse, one is a lawyer, right? Both doing well in life, both having a good time, both in a good relationship. They come into the hobby and they come in and eventually they do meet one of these people. They meet one of these guys. And as I said before, I think there is a very, very, very good reason for this. And it's not always totally the fault of the person, the fault of OP, right? As I said before, Warhammer has been a refuge for broken people for a long time. The amount of people I know in this hobby who have done very silly things to themselves, taking themselves out the equation and the gene pool, right, through sheer misery. It's the ultimate expression of misery, is deleting yourself, is saying, I've had enough of this, right? Nearly everybody that I know who has either attempted to do that or has actually done that has been a Warhammer hobbyist, right? I only know of one person who tried to do something silly who wasn't that. Unfortunately, I know 4 or 5 over my years in nerddom, But most of them have been in the hobby, and the ones who have actually succeeded have both been avid hobbyists. You've all heard of my Dark Eldar guy when I was at Games Workshop, right? The guy who had a few Space Marine bits and he was giving away his Land Raider. He cornered me in Sainsbury's and tried to get me to buy his Land Raider, and then when I couldn't buy it, he said he'd just give it to me. It didn't register at the time, and I still feel bad about it now. I know I shouldn't before you say anything, but yeah, he took himself out of the game later on, right, and sometime later, and that is a big warning sign. When people are giving away stuff, huge warning sign. So what I'm trying to say is that these people are in the hobby, and they're in the hobby by quite a margin too. There's a lot of them here, and they will come in, and if they see normal people who are happy in their lives, who are going about their business and are just genuinely really happy and really normal and liked by everybody, and then they have the goal to come in and be good at the hobby or be better at the hobby than you, that is a tough pill to swallow. Do you know how I know? Because I was in the situation too. And I wasn't the guy people were jealous of. I was the jealous guy, right? So before university, there was a well, at the start of university, there was a gaming society, right? Now, there were 2 gaming societies in my university. There was one that I ended up joining with my friend Matt, which was really cool, and there was another one which did some wargaming too. There was this guy there, and I've been doing really well in life before then, like in terms of like having friends and stuff, you know. But I was very insecure. I was in a new place and I was older than everybody else, so I didn't quite know what to do. And, you know, I was just lost when I started university. And this guy took to it like a duck to water. He just was really good. He was really happy. Everybody liked him, you know. And I went to Games Workshop to play him, where we met for our thing, because we were allowed to play games there, lo and behold. And, you know, he absolutely thrashed me in Warhammer, like, at 40k. And I spent so much time getting my Grey Knights ready to go. No, Space Marines at the time, yeah. Normal Space Marines ready to go. And he just decimated me. And I held it together, just about. But I hated this guy. I hated him. And I just thought, how dare you be so easy in life? How dare you get straight A's? I was really struggling at the start of university. You know, Durham is a tough university, and I was struggling. And I was just thinking, how dare you just swan through life, getting everything right all the time? You get so many things right, it's almost boring being around you. So, oh, this went right for me as well. Oh, this went right for me as well. I got another A star on that A level. On that essay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, sorted. You know, he wasn't nasty about it, but it would grate on me. And eventually, I just absolutely despised this guy. And then he had the gall to come into my hobby, my safe space, and be really good at it. You kidding me? I despised him. Okay. And I didn't know how to process that. And eventually, you know, I said a few snippy comments to him, like, oh, I wasn't interested in being around him at all, you know. And we actually became friends after all this. We actually became quite good friends. And I took a step back from the hobby and started dating different people, and started, you know, going to different societies and throwing myself into my work. And eventually, I got a good grade, and I was doing well, and things turned around for me. But at that time, you know, the rage was there. I couldn't stand this bloke. You know, absolutely not. And you know what's even worse? He had the gall to be a nice guy. And this is what I mean, Dawn, right? If you're a dickhead to this guy, OP wanted you to be an arsehole. What he sent to me was his fantasy of what he wanted to happen, so he could be the victim. So he wants the right to feel. OP feels in his chest, right? He feels awful. Because this is his safe space, and it's been invaded by normal blokes and normal girls, and now he's getting his ass kicked by them, right? And there's a part of him that says, I shouldn't feel this way. I'm being a real dick by feeling this way. I shouldn't feel this way. Do you know what he's done? He's invented a scenario where he's legitimate in the way that he feels, right? He's invented a scenario where he's allowed to feel this way because you were all nasty to him. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? Again, do you know how I know that he did that? Because that's what I did. I didn't send it in to anybody, but in my mind, I fantasized about this guy victimizing me. And it made me feel better, you know? Because I felt justified in my hatred of him. It was uncomfortable to confront the fact that he was a nice guy. And it took him actually inviting me out for a pint off his own back. He wasn't trying to get him good with me. He was like, hey, North's a nice guy. Do you want to go for a pint? And I was like, yeah, I suppose, And we hit it off, and all those feelings went away. They washed straight away, and I was fine, But I know what this guy's feeling. I know what OP's feeling. And if OP, if you're watching this, just know I don't think you're a bad guy. I think you made a mistake. And you made a mistake through insecurity, right? And I know without forgiveness, that insecurity is going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Until you do something either silly to you or somebody else, or you just wallow in misery, right? Just know, mate, it will get better, and you will be alright, okay? Take it from me. The best thing for you to do now, right, if what happened is what happened, is to either write directly, that's me again by the way, Cyberpunk, is to either write directly to our friends here, to Nora and her boyfriend, and apologise and own up to it. And if you want to, say, listen, North was right in what he was saying, that's exactly how I feel, and I'm really sorry. I bet both of those people will say, that's fine. Water under the bridge. Right? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they seem pretty reasonable to me. Right? I think they'll both say, that's fine. We'll forget all about it. Right? We'll play all the games with you, no problem. Right? If you can't do that, send it to me, and I'll send it to them. Alright? Because I don't want you cast out in the cold here. Hobby Nightmares is not about, excluding people. And it's not about wrecking people's days. There are lots of Hobby Nightmares that I don't read out. Right? Because if the result of me reading your Hobby Nightmare is a net negative in your life, I'm not reading it out. And I'm concerned that me reading your fabrication is going to affect you negatively, right? So let's sort this out. But that's what I think. That normal people, right, are really, really, really off-putting to some people who find sanctuary in this hobby. Because I've been on both sides of this aisle. I've been one of the broken people. And that's what people don't seem to get about the channel either. They think I'm looking down on broken people in the hobby. Dude, I fucking was one. I was one. Sometimes I still am. Dude, if I see some, Henry Cavill looking motherfucker come into the hobby store, I'm looking at him and going, oh, this prick. Do you know what I mean? Like, dude, I've been there. Right? I can still be that guy today. Because don't feel bad if it's you. Alright? If it's your day to feel that way. Everyone feels that way. You never goes away, man. There's different levels, right? Because I know I'll look at that Henry Cavill looking motherfucker and I'll be like, this prick, right? But I know some other dude who'll be looking at me and the way I dress and the way I look. Been to the gym, man, I'm looking great, right? I'm not ashamed of it. But compared to the Henry Cavill dude, I may as well be an amoeba, a bit of sludge on the floor, and I hate him. But I know some other dude who'd be looking at me going, this motherfucker. It's levels, man. It's levels. But what you need to understand is, everybody feels that way, even that Henry Cavill dude. Do you know what the Henry Cavill dude is doing? He's looking around at all the nerds and going, I hope they accept me. It goes, if you're a Henry Cavill looking dude, right? You're so good looking, you sort of end up at the bottom of the totem pole again. Because now you're looking at all of the nerds going, I really hope they accept me and they don't think I'm some sort of poser. Right? It's incredible. This hobby's incredible. It really is. But you're not the only ones. When normal people and hobbyists get together, friction happens sometimes, right? We had a really good comment from one of our illustrious watchers the other day, and I'm not going to name her because I asked if I could and she didn't get back to me in time, so but you know who you are. I'm going to read out your comment. So she was responding to another Hobby Nightmare the other day, and she was talking about Revenge of the Nerds, right? A classic case of Revenge of the Nerds. And she says, us women get this too. OP is resentful that you can be an otherwise normal person, but also gets to indulge in nerdy hobbies. You're not supposed to be there in his mind. In the neckbeard's mind, the fact that he's undesirable, he stinks, he's at the bottom of the social ladder, he is like this, is because he chose the enlightened path of nerddom over the path of normiedom. Normiedom being what everybody else does. Nerddom, to him, comes with such social costs. Being ostracised, smelling, not washing, being at the bottom of the social ladder. These people feel they've martyred themselves and have suffered for their interests and have earned the right to be the arbiter of geekdom. They see people that look more normal in their space as somebody who is having their cake and eating it too. Like a tourist, And she quotes, "How dare you share my hobby with me and also be somebody who has a partner, a family, a mortgage, a well-paid job. Look like a regular man and have an actual life. I suffered to earn my fedora and you're just able to swan in and join in my space? That's not fair." Unquote. And I think that's what we came across in the last Hobby Nightmare. And I think a lot of people out there will resonate with that and go, do you know what? And here's the thing, guys. I've been vulnerable in this. I've told you. I've been there. I've been on both sides of this coin. I felt this way. Dude, I still feel this way. Do you know those videos? You know who you are. And I know some of you. Right? Do you know some of those videos of young ladies wearing low-cut tops, wearing some of them wearing bikinis and stuff, doing models, painting models, right? And you're thinking to yourself, you never had to suffer for this. I took loads of shit in high school for doing this. Now you're just coming in here with your perfect arse and just, swanning about. She's right. She's got a point, right? We've all felt that little bit of resentment. Some of them will be mild, like mine, when I chastise myself, going, "Oh, get over it, you're the man." Nice boobs are nice boobs. You know what I mean? But then there's other parts of me that are just little bit goes, oh, because you're territorial and it's your thing, right? It's your thing. You wanna protect your bit, But as long as you can look at that feeling and say, "Hey, I know what that is. All right, I know what that is." Okay, I call my dark passenger James for obvious reasons, right? And James is a dickhead, right? James fills my head with things that I don't want to think about. Embarrassing times in my life, whether I'm truly happy in my life as it is. He tries to sabotage everything. He doesn't want what's best for me at all. And he's the guy who sits there in my head and goes, "Look at this bitch with her tits out, painting a Black Templars and her orcs. What a slag," right? And the rest of me goes, "Hey, there's a fine-ass woman there painting some models. That's good shit." Anyway, moving on with my day, right? The second guy is the guy I want to be. The first guy isn't. Don't listen to that voice, dudes. You're stronger than that, right? We're all okay. But this is, to me, one of the key factors. And I can't believe it's taken this long for me to come around and do this video, because this is the mission statement of the Northern Exile channel. The Northern Exile channel is essentially examining what happens when normal people and nerds come together. Sometimes literally, but you know what I'm saying, right? When they arrive in the same space, right? This is the whole channel is built around this, and I think it's way overdue that we did a video like this. And in a weird way, these three beautiful people, and they are three beautiful people, right? They've had a disagreement. They've, had a really traumatic event happen. Well, one of them has, and now all of them have, because they've been outed on the internet. But I hope that they see this video and they are able to go, "Do you know what? Bygones be bygones, let's move on," right? If forgiveness is sought. OP, I really hope you see this. Seek forgiveness, my friend. I bet it's coming. Because hopefully this video will go a long way for people to understand how you're feeling in that moment, right? Don't double down. Be the bigger man. Put your big boy pants on and take some responsibility, and things will work out for you. Alright? Live in honesty. Live in, be a man. Live in honesty. Get your backbone. It'll be alright. It will be fine. And you know what? Treat it like this. When you get that forgiveness, because you're honest about it, that is your first foundational building block to joining the ranks of the normal. To being one of those guys at the hobby store, so next time you're the guy standing there having a game whilst your hot girlfriend is on the next table over, right? That could be you, all right? So just seek forgiveness. And if you don't want to do that, fine, disregard what I'm saying, but that's my advice anyway. Hopefully the guys, the couple who are in this, Dawn and Nora, have had their time to say what they needed to say, and that's all I've got to say about this phenomenon. What do you think about when normal people and nerds are in the same space and the frictions that then occur? Have you seen anything happen that has been a bit odd, a bit weird? I think I'm going to do another video on this next week to talk about it and maybe get some of your opinions on one of our comment sections. That'd be pretty cool to do. So anyway, I love you a long time. I will speak to you tomorrow for some more Hobby Nightmares. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.